We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos Chelek Chof Aleph, volume 21, and this is the first Sicha for the Parsha of Yisro in volume 21. In this Sicha, the Rebbe discusses the language in the Pasuk. It says that when the Yidden camped, it says Eloshin Yochid Vayichan Shom Yisrael, and everywhere else it says Vayachanu in a plural, and it explains that it was Ki'ish Echad B'Leiv Echad, one person, one Leiv Echad. The Rebbe explains this Rashi here and gives a whole different insight that Ki'ish Echad means that there was unity amongst the people themselves, and B'Leiv Echad was towards Hashem. The Rebbe explains how the words sometimes in the Torah are used when it talks about a people, they're used in a plural, and sometimes they're used in a singular, and why in those places where Rashi is mefarish, it would seem that over here there should not be Vayichan in a singular lashon, because over here in preparation for Matan Torah, it should be Vayachanu, because they were not all in the same mind frame, etc., etc. The Rebbe explains great detail and the various places in the Chumash where there's a Lashon Rabbim, and Rashi's explanation also explains exactly the diuk in this Rashi, the quote by Yicham Shom Yisro from the Pasuk, exactly as it matches up, doesn't match up with the Mitzrayim before they say Achareihem. Over there, Rashi does not quote the Mitzrayim. There's a change in the Lashon Kish Echad B'Leiv Echad. Over there it's B'Leiv Echad Kish Echad. And more points over here will all be explained based on the Rebbe's explanation for when we use a logically makes sense to use a Lashon Rabbim on a people, or when we use a Lashon Yachid, as the Rebbe will explain. In time, let's go step by step. Aleph, Yisro. From Pasuk Vayichan Shom Yisrael Neged Hahar, the Pasuk from the verse that it says that Israel camped against opposite the mountain when they came to Mount Chodesh and getting ready for Matan Torah on Rosh Chodesh Sivan. It says that they camped Neged Hahor, opposite the mountain. They camped there, but it says the Lashon of Vayichan in a singular. Is Rashi maitig the Verter Vayichan Shom Yisrael. Rashi quotes from the Pasuk these three words, Vayichan Shom Yisrael, and Israel camped there. On his mefarish, and Rashi explains, Ki ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. And Rashi continues, Avol shar kol hachanoyos, but all the other encampments, when the Jewish people encamped, over there it was bitar umais ubemachlekes, with grievances and fights. As the Rebbe will also explain later on, Tarumis refers to Hashem. They had a complaint to Hashem. Machlokes is amongst themselves, as will be explained later on. The Malel, the Pashtus, as you study this on the simple level, superficially, is there diuk upirush in Rashi in Mechilta. So the difficulty and the explanation that Rashi has is the same as in the Mechilta. What's the issue? As dosh state Vayichan, over here it states Vayichan in a singular Lashon Yochid. Nit the umetun ve'state Vayachnu, different than everywhere else where it says Vayachnu in the plural, they kept. Lashon Rabbi in the plural. Is Rashi Mevayir. So Rashi explains. Bal Dichaniya Damult is given Ki Ish Echad B'Leiv Echad. At that point, before by Man Chodev Keneged Ahor, they were like one person with one heart. Avol Shar Kol Hachanoyis B'Tarumes B'Machlokes. For all the other encampments, when they stopped, was with grievances and with discord. The far state umetun vayachanu loshen rabim, and that's why everywhere else says vayach loshen rabim. That would be the simple approach to understand the Rashi as it is stated in the Mechilta. But when we examine it more closely, we see that Rashi's quote from the Pasuk, as well as Rashi's language, changes from the way it says in Mechilta, which points to us that Rashi is saying something else. If this is the case, according to this, Darf and Ober verstehen, we need to understand. Therefore, we need to understand if that's what's bothering and what the explanation of Rashi is. About der ganze Diuk von Rashi is von Vayichan Loshen Yochid, since the entire emphasis that Rashi learns is because it says here Vayichan in a singular way. Rashi gedarf mighty sein, so Rashi should have quoted from the verse, nor the word Vayichan. He should have just quoted the word Vayichan. Farvos bringt arop euch die Wörter Shom Yisro. Why is he also quoting from the Pasuk Vayichan Shom Yisro? Only Vayichan. He's explaining why is there a language of a yochid, of a singular language over here when it was all of the people. So we should just bring down from the pasuk the word Vayichan. But the Rebbe says, maybe we can say we know why Rashi has to bring down Vayichan Shom, but certainly we have a problem if this is what Rashi is trying to tell us, why he would bring down Vayichan Shom Yisrael from the pasuk. And Rebbe explains, if Rashi wants to show that there is a difference between the place that they camped by Mount Chorev, opposite the mountain, and the encampment that they had in all other places, and that over there it was not like by Chorev, so Rashi has to quote the word Shom, to tell you that the Vayichan is only Shom as opposed to everywhere else. So it's necessary for Rashi to bring down the word Shom. But why would Rashi bring down the word Yisrael, which almost seems to go against what he's trying to tell you? Because if it's Yisrael as a people, so then Vayichan makes sense. Then we don't even have a problem. Why should it be in the plural? We could say Israel as a singular entity, Vayichan. Let's look inside. Those was Rashi bringt euch dem Wort Shom. This that Rashi also brings the word Shom, Yesh Loimar, we can say. Loit Rashi, according to Rashi, is euch dos was shar kol hachanoyis betarumes ubemachloikes. Let man up that. How do we know that all the other encampments were with grievances and with discord? So we learned this nit norvi in Mechilta, not only as we find as the Mechilta learns it, because from them was dort steht vayachanu loshen rabim, because in the other place it says vayachanu in a plural, they came, nor from them pasuk. Rashi wants to bring the evidence from this pasuk Vayichan Shom. Vayichan Shom. As Blois Shom is given Vayichan, that it's only there that there was Vayichan, Loshen Yochid, Ki ish echad v'leiv echad. Unit by Shar Kol HaChanoyis, but not by the other places where they encamped. So maybe that's what Rashi is bringing to say, not like the Mechilta, which we learn it out because it says Befedish Vayachanu. Rashi wants to learn out because it says Vayichan Shom, and Shom means only there, not elsewhere. Matter of fact, Rashi doesn't think, perhaps the Rabbi explains, that from Vayachanu that it says elsewhere would be any evidence that it was Bitaromis or B'machloikis, that it was with discord, because the fact that it says Vayachanu because we're talking about a multitude of people, a lot of people, Arabim. So it says Vayachanu. How do we know that it was because of the Machloikis? So we have to say, Rashi therefore wants to say Vayicham Shom. We learn it from the diuk of the pasuk that over there Vayicham, but not elsewhere. The Rabbi explains, Nor fun danen. It is only from here, Veisman, we know Asharach Hanoyis Betarumas B'machloikis, that the other encampments were with grievances and with discord. Miyikutura Dikra Shom, because there's an extra word in our pasuk that says Shom. Could have said Vayichan Yisrael Neged Hahor. It says Vayichan Shom, extra word Shom. We learn out only there, but not elsewhere. But the proof from the Mechilta, because it says Vayachnu, Rashi does not consider that as a proof. Thus, the fact that it says Vayachnu plural, Ken Zayin Kipshutei, that may be very simply Eseretzich wegen etliche verschiedene Menschen Shvatim v'chulu. Since we're talking about several different people and tribes, so we can say Vayachanu. Aber we don't have to say they're not at all in any discord or any grievance one with the other. It's just there's a lot of different people there. So just the fact that it says Vayachanu doesn't mean that it was Tarumas Machlokes. So we understand why Rashi brings down here from the pasuk Vayichan Shom. Why does Rashi bring down Yisro? Like over the Shaila, but the question remains: Favos bringt Rashi arop dem weiter dicken Wort Yisrael? Why does Rashi also quote the further word Yisrael to make his point that there was Lev Echad, Ish Echad, as opposed to the other place? Why bring Yisrael? On the contrary, Rashi actually makes it more difficult by bringing down Yisrael for his pshat. On the contrary, them was Rashi is mighty them word Yisrael. The fact that Rashi quotes the word Yisrael, so his commentary becomes difficult. Because since it says the language Yisrael, Yisrael, was meant alle Eden ve'en klal. That means the Jewish people, Yisrael, as one general, a folk, a nation, is doch derbai masim der Loshen Vayichan. So the language of Vayichan is fitting over there. Loshen Yochid, which is Loshen Yochid. And then we don't have this whole drash, menolon ledayik, ados men kishechad b'leiv echad. So how do we know to derive from this? Kishechad b'leiv echad. It's Vayichan because Vayichan Yisrael. And Yisrael as a nation is a Loshen Yochid. In Ois Beis, the Rebbe challenges the second point, the last point that he made, that actually because it says Yisrael, maybe Vayichan goes on Yisrael. So that's why it says in a singular way. So the Rebbe says, but in our case, it's hard to say so perhaps because in the same pasuk there is a change. First of all, the pasuk says Vayachanu, that they kept Bamidbar, Loshen Rabbi. And then it changes all of a sudden to Vayichan Loshen Yochid. So it's hard to say that this means the whole community, because why would it say before Vayachnu and here Vayichan? But the Rebbe says that's not a good question, seemingly, because not a good evidence. Kishachad b'leiv echad is not proof for that, because we can say that in the same pasuk we find in other places there's a change within the pasuk itself. Base. Rashi's proof is nicht azoy von dem Loshon Vayichan farzich. It's not just because it says Vayichan, nor von dem Shinu in dem pasuk gufa, but from the change in the verse itself. Früher steht in pasuk Vayachanu b'midbar Loshon Rabbi. It says they camped in a plural, a way of a plural. Und tekef la'acharize steht, and then immediately it says Vayichan sham Loshon Yochid. So therefore, it's not fitting to say these two separate lashonos in the same pasuk. From them was in ein hemshech hakosuv is the Torah mishana. The fact that in one flow of the pasuk, the Torah changes from Vayachan to Vayichan, changes from the plural to the singular, is muchach anegat ahor zayin zegiv and kishach b'leiv echad. So that's the proof that they were kishach b'leiv echad. So even though it says Vayichan Yisrael, but the fact that it's changed from before, we know that it is kishach b'leiv echad. But the Rebbe asks, we find this also in many places, that within the same pasuk there's a change from plural to singular. But after verstehen, we need to, however, understand. We find in many places in the Torah, as in demselben pasuk ubehemshech echad, that in the same verse and in the same flow, werden benegeya am Yisro gezog beide lashonos, as far as it relates to the Jewish people, you have both languages. So we see that in one and the same pasuk. As for example, we have Lashon Rab and Lashon Yochid. We find weiter in the Parsha Seinu. Later on in the Parsha, it says Vayar Ha'am. It doesn't say Vayir U Ha'am. The people saw plural, but Vayar Ha'am. So that's a singular for the Am. But then it says, it doesn't say Vayanu Ah or Vayamoid. It says Vayanu U Vayamdu Merochik. And they moved and they stood from a distance. So it's a change from Vayar Lashon Yochid on the Am, and then Vayanu Vayamdu in the plural. And also in the previous Seder. It says Vayar Yisrael Yodak Doilo Gomer. It doesn't say Vayiru Yisrael. It says they saw in a singular. And then it says changes to plural. Vayiru Ha'am Gomer Vayaminu Gomer. And they feared the people and they believed. So it changes to the plural. So the Rebbe now analyzes the difference between the way this is brought down in the Mechilta and the way Rashi quotes from the Mechilta, the way Rashi brings down in his commentary on the Torah. We also need to understand that Mokir from Pirush Rashi, the Pashtus, the source for Rashi's commentary, simply is from Mechilta. That comes from Mechilta. Aber der Loshen in Mechilta is, but the language in the Mechilta is Kol Mokim Shu Omer Vayisu Vayachanu Noisim B'Machloikis V'Choinim B'Machloikis. There, everywhere they were journeying, it says plural, they journeyed, they camped, because they had their journeys with the escort and they camping with the escort. Avokan Hushvu Kulam, but here they were all straightened out together. Leivechad, they're all one heart. Kach Nemar, that's what it says, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Har. That's the Lashon from the Mechilta. So what is the differences between the Rashi and the Mechilta? Von die Shinuyim zwischen Lashon Rashi Lashon Mechilta. So what are the changes as it's in the Mechilta and Rashi's languages? Aleph, in Mechilta steht, Kan Hushvu Kulum Leivechad. Over here, they're all straightened out to one heart. When Rashi is Mefarish, ki ish echad b'leiv echad. Not one heart only, but also says ki ish echad. Adds the ki ish echad. Another change. Base. Mechilta state noisim b'choinim b'machloikis. They would journey and camp while there was machloikis. When the Pirish Rashi stay in zwei l'shonis, Rashi uses two l'shonis. B'tarumes u'b'machloikis, with grievances and machloikis. And we'll see these two l'shonis fit, as the Rebbe will say, the ki ish echad b'leiv echad, as mentioned before. And number three, in Mechilta Firzich Ois, in the Mechilta, it concludes, Kach Nemar V'yichan Sham Yisrael Neged Ha'or. On Rashi, so Rashi brings down the entire pasuk, V'yichan Yisrael Neged Ha'or. When Rashi stellt sich nor V'yichan Sham Yisrael, Rashi only brings from the pasuk V'yichan Sham Yisrael, und is nicht meitig Neged Ha'or. So it doesn't say opposite the mountain, so that tells you something. As the Rebbe will explain, that this is all important to the difference, the way Rashi's approach and the Mechilta's approach and the precise language that they use fits each one's interpretation. But first, the Rebbe is going to try to compare now also the Rashis, a similar Rashi, like here we're saying ki ish echad b'leiv echad with regards to the Yidden, and Matan Torah, Rashi used a similar interpretation before, by when the Mitzrayim was chasing the Yidden. It says v'hine Mitzrayim noisei achareihem. So over there, it says also in a singular, and Rashi uses the lashon over there is b'leiv echad ki ish echad, the little changes and a little different. And the Rebbe is going to compare these two Rashis and point out that we need to understand the differences. Dalet. Euch darf man verstehen. We also further need to understand demselben Teuchen von Rashi's Pirush Do, the same contents of Rashi's commentary here, aber b'shinuyim, but with changes. Gefindt man die Pirushe in der Frier dike Serdra, we find in Rashi's commentary to in the previous Sedra. Von dem Posuk Vayisru b'nei Yisrael es einehem, v'hinei Mitzrayim noisei achareihem. So before it says that b'nei Yisrael raised their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were journeying after them, is Rashi maitig the Werter noisei achareihem. He quotes from the Posuk the singular Loshen, Noiseya, Mitzrayim, was singularly journeying Achareim after them. When his Mefarish explains, B'leiv Echad, one heart, Ki Ish Echad, like one person, Zetman. So what do we see? As dort is Rashi nit maitig euch dem Wort Mitzrayim, Noiseya Achareim. He doesn't add who is the one that it was Mitzrayim. Doesn't also bring down the word Mitzrayim, Noisei Achareihem. Just brings Noisei Achareihem, as opposed to here, Rashi quotes from the Pasuk that it was Yisrael, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Nit V'Pirushe Khan, unlike his commentary over here, who at his Yemaitik Navart Yisrael, where he does quote from the Pasuk Yisrael. Under Tam Bepashtus is Kinal. Why does Rashi not bring down the word Mitzrayim? They say Achareya, because that would be contrary to the interpretation of Rashi. Since it says Mitzrayim, on Mitzrayim it fits the language of Noiseya in a singular way, because a Mitzrayim as a nation is Noiseya. So why would Rashi bring down that word Mitzrayim, which would sort of answer the problem of Loshen Yochid, and then Rashi doesn't have his commentary that it's B'leiv Echad Ki Ish Echad. And so therefore Rashi doesn't bring it down. Yeah. But as the Rebbe is going to ask in a minute, Rashi doesn't bring it down, but it's still in the Pasuk, so what's the problem? Okay, but we understand why Rashi doesn't want to bring down from the Pasuk, because this would not help Rashi's cause of trying to explain that there's a problem here. If you brought down Mitzrayim, there would be no problem here. Because this was conflict, this was contradict that precise language of Niseya Loshen Yochid if he brought down Mitzrayim, because Mitzrayim is Loshen Yochid. The Baldas Batzitzich zum Volk als ein Klau, since it applies to the nation as one rule. Stellt sich aber die Scheile, however, the question that we have is Aleph. Let it be. Rashi doesn't bring it down, but it says, so why does Rashi have to say that it goes on the nation, the Egyptian, they were chasing them. That's Shaykh Loshen Yochid. So how does Rashi derive that with one heart and like one person, because it says Neseya? No, it says Neseya because we're talking about the Egyptian. Why does Rashi quote from the Pasuk Neseya Acharem? Just bring down Neseya. And Gimel, the Pirushi Kam, the Parsha Seinu, is there say that Rashi changes around the order. By us it says Ki ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. On Dortmund state, on Dortmund it says b'leiv echad ki ish echad. So why are all these changes? The Rebbe is going to come up now with a very general ideas when we can use a plural and when we can use a singular. And sometimes when we are referring to different parts of a community or a nation, things that they all do together, that's called in a singular because they're doing it all the same. But in things that they're doing separate, even though they're doing it as a people, they're still a plural because they're not doing the same thing. And then we're going to apply this to all the various different psukim. Hey, the explanation in all this. Das was benegeya Arabim, or the ganzen Volk, the fact that as it relates to many or to an entire people, wird lip amim genutz loshen rabim und amol loshen yochid, that sometimes it's used the plural and sometimes it uses the singular. So if you learn up pshat, makes sense why sometimes we would use a plural and why we would use a singular. And based on that, even in the same pasuk, we can have sometimes plural and singular, depending on the aspects. When do we say a plural? When this is singular? So, as das is wenn es retzich wegen a Pa'ula, when you're talking about an act, was in dem sein Faran zwei Fanim. You talk about there's two ways this act takes place, which is like this: when Arabim tu and the Pa'ula ba'ofen shava ve'echad, if the many are doing that same act in the straight, in an equal and one way, then kennen sie alle bezeichnet werden als Yochid. Then we can all describe them as an individual. There are many people, but they're still doing one and the same thing in one way. Weil es tut sich eine und dieselbe Pa'ula, because there is one and the same act. There's no difference between, even though it's being done by many. But on the other hand, but when it's done in various different ways, durch verschiedene Menschen von der Kfutza, to the various different people of this group, the folk, then we say a language of a plural, because they're doing it, each one is doing individually. It says, nit ta in them an inyan, there's no idea here to create that union as one generality, because there's a bunch of people doing different things in different ways, each one on their own. That is when we're talking about actions. Actions can sometimes be the very same by everybody. But when we talk about feelings, feelings are never the same. Each one has their own feelings. So over there should always seemingly say plural. When we're discussing about a feeling, or a thought in one's mind, or similar when we talk about a many, was in that is doch ain't the same Shabbos over there. Their ideas, they say them, or their feelings, Shabbos are not equal. They're not the same from one to the other. Is this alamolin fanim rabim? That's why it's always in cases it's always a plural because there's a many. Damult werd gesagt. In other words, there's always done different ideas, a different feelings. So it's always many, and that's why it is always spoken of in a language of a rabbi. Gesagt loshen rabbi. So the Riber is nitkein to me. That's why it is not a surprise that we brought the psukim before that we have plural, we have singular. So how do we even know that it's kishach b'leiv echad? Because it's not a surprise. Because megefint has been again them cloud from the folk the umma, as it relates to the generality of a nation, a people. Nutz der Pasik by the Lashonis, the Pasik would use both languages. Sailosh Rabim and Sailosh Yachid, both the plural language and also the singular language. And at times the Torah would use the both styles of plural and singular in the very same Pasuk. But dos is tolui to us as batzitza, because that would depend what it's referring to. Rebbe is going to give now the example. V'mirzen b'posuk hanal. As we see in the posuk that we mentioned earlier, it says Vayar Yisrael es hayoda gedoylo. So it says singular. Israel saw the great hand. Then it says they feared Vayiromas Hashem, Vayaminu b'Hashem. They feared Hashem and they believed in Hashem. So Vayar is a singular. Vayar from the Eden was meant in Iyok Pshute. Vayar of the Yidden, which means they physically, they actually, literally, they saw it. Zeyer Zen Asher Os Hashem b'Mitzrayim. When they saw what Hashem did to the Egyptian, Zainen Ze alle gewen gleich in them. They were all equal. They all saw the same. The far is Vayar Loshen Yochid. That's what Vayar is Loshen Yochid. Vayar Yisrael. They also. Aber in Zeyer Yirem Hashem. But in their fear of Hashem, when in Zeyer Vayaminu Hashem, and in their believing in Hashem, is doch sicher given kama v'kama darges. There must have been many, many steps. In them is given over there different levels. Vayiru, they feared individually. Vayaminu, they believed individually. Each one different. Loshen Rabim, in a language of a plural. Each one, it was in a different way. Valderich says, same thing is b'negeya than posik b'parsha seinu. Same thing as far as the posik in our parsha. Vayar ha'om. So the people saw. Vayanu, plural, vayamdu, plural, merochek, and they moved and they stood from a distance. In Inyan fun Vayar, in the idea that they saw, which is talking about the Riyah Kipshuta physically seen. Zainen ze alle given gleich. They were all equal. They all saw together. Ein Riyah Hatzefar Ein Sik Echad. One seeing united them all as one. Ukenal, as we said earlier. They all are doing the same exact, it's equal. They all see the same thing. Mashen came Vayanu, but when we talk about they moved back, Vayamdu Barochi, and they stood from a distance, Belchazainen Farbundu Midzer Gefil, which is connected, tied to their feeling. Un Oiftresti, how much they were shaken up. Ukayetzaba is Masim Loshoravim. Over there, it's fitting the plural. because of the multitude of ways and differences between them. And there's some people like this, something like that. That's why it's all brought down in a Lashon Rabbi. So therefore, we don't have problems in these psukim, as the Rebbe brought before, to show that we can sometimes use a plural and a singular and the same pasuk, because that represents which aspect. If it's a physical aspect and they're doing it all the same, then that's considered to be a singular. And if it's a feeling or it's something which they do everybody differently, then it becomes a plural. So now let's see the pasuk that by Mitzrayim. In the pasuk of Pari Hikrif, pasuk that Pari came close when he was chasing them by the to the ocean. It says, "Vayisu b'nei Yisrael eseneim." So the b'nei Yisrael lifted their eyes. V'hineim Mitzrayim noiseya achareim. Mitzrayim was journeying after them. So is the adgosha nit oif noiseya? The emphasis is Mitzrayim is not journeying, but Mitzrayim was journeying after them. They were chasing them. We're not talking about the Pulas Hanesiya, the act of journeying. They saw the journey. Nor if achareyem, on chasing them, the Mekuvan Hanesiya, the intent of that journey. Adoshis aridi fachareyem, this was chasing after the Yidden. Was his farbundun, and why was he chasing? Now this was an emotional thing. It was something to do with the heart. So the heart of Paris and his servants changed around, turned around, and that's why they were chasing. That had to be various different levels. With their evilness and bad intentions, that's why they were chasing them. But they didn't all have the same level of bad intent. They were different levels in that. And in them, and in this, not all Egyptians were equal. Zicher seine mechulek Pare. There was a difference in Pare. The Chartume Mitzrayim, the necromancers of Egypt. Those that fear the word of Hashem. We learned before. Those did fear the words of Hashem. So they were all different categories of Egyptians and expressed in the level of hate, in the level of chasing. By Parin as especially those who were begging Pare that he should allow the Jews to leave Egypt. They for sure wasn't as adamant as the other ones. So then it seemingly should have said noisim in a plural, because there was different levels of chasing that consisted in this episode. So why is it saying Alosh Yochid? Is Rashi mefarish mechadish? So therefore Rashi comes up, explains, and comes up with the idea b'leiv echad ki yishach, b'leiv echad ki yishach, which means as adrab. On the contrary, while it seems like they should have different levels, should be noisim, but no, it was b'leiv echad ki yishach as adrab. Those of us who state Niseya Loshin Yochid. Why does it say Niseya in a singular way? And that format is the far or Zeir Niseya is given Acharei. Because they were chasing the Yidden. Noch Yogan the Yidden. Chasing after the Yidden is in them Noch Yogan the Yidden. So they were actually chasing the Yidden with the same amount of hatred and animosity. Not like the Noch Yidden is given. Need to make unlike you might think, as in them Zane given Chilukim, that you might think that there were differences. Mitzad because Valderech the Sugim Shonim Anal, similar to the various categories I mentioned before, nor is it alle seine given Leiv Echad. Says they were all with one heart. Mit ein Herz, was is full mit Sinna to the in one heart which is full with hatred to the Jews. Und das hat Geurim given. And this brought about as his own Zayin ki ish echad. It brought them all together. That's why they called Mitzrayim Noiseya. They all hated the Jews. It made them into one. The Pharisees say that. That's why over there Rashi brings down. It's the Belev Echad. It's their heart made them into ki ish echad. The reason they were Noiseya singular is because of their heart was equally chasing and wanted to be against the Jews. And Al Derech says Zayin is moving by Parsha saying you understand in our Parsha as well. In the Pirush HaPosik, Vayichan Shom Yisro Neged Ahor, the simple meaning that the Israel encamped opposite the mountain. So, Benegeya that Etzem Chaniya B'Muvona HaPoshut from the Eden. If you talk about the literal understanding, encampment in Yenem Ort is the Posik Mediya Friya. So the Pasuk already tells you in the beginning, Vayachnu b'midbar, that they kept the midbar. Musman Zogun, so we have to say, we're not telling you now again that they just camped over there. We're trying to tell you, Ados was the Pasuk is Moshe, Vayichan Shom Yisrael Neged Hor. What is the Pasuk adding? And they camped Israel Neged Hor. Kum zu mevayir zayin dem Vayachan. It's coming to interpret and to articulate how they camped over there. The way they camped over there. And how they prepared to receive the Torah was which they needed, where they were going to receive over there. Stelz of the Shaila. So the question arises, so basically, we established that Vayichan Shom Yisrael isn't just talking about the physical encampment of the Yidden. We're talking about a preparation encampment, because we already said about the encampment of Vayachnu b'Midbar. We're just telling you that there's something they encamped in a prepared way. So the Shaila arises, Dachone Nafshis und der Rotzen. Und Achone zu Matan Torah, this preparation of the soul and the desire and the preparation of Matan Torah is doch bei jeden Iden gewen lefi madrigosei umatzove haruch. So that had to be by every Yid according their standing, their level, their spiritual standing. Anders wie beim Zweitnid, different than by another Jew. Unheimlich for Moshe, Aaron, and Shimon Zkenim, starting with Moshe, Aaron, and Shimon Zkenim, so it was different. Und andere verschiedene Dargis, and similar there. So there was a whole different madregas, how they prepared themselves. Bis zu Azad Darge in Kotz Hasheni, there was even an extreme other level from Eden, which even after the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf, there were such Jews that argued, is Hashem amongst us? So you have preparing for Matan Torah, the Moshe Rabbeinu, the Aaron, the Shimon, the Zkenim, have 70 elders, and then you have somebody who's not even sure if Hashem is amongst them. These were all the Yidden. They prepared, they camped before the mountain. In the plural, because it's a whole different levels of preparedness between the various difference of the Am Yisrael. But Warren the Rashi is mighty from Pasuk the Verter, so therefore Rashi cautions us, and he quotes from the Pasuk the words, "Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Yisrael came." Aber nicht der weite dicke Wörter nekad hor, not opposite about just Vayichan Sham Yisrael. As don't mean the Pasuk, that here what the Pasuk means, as als Yisrael sein alle Eden given ki ish echad. Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Jewish as the nation, as Yisrael, over there they were all together. Mitan ichud von einem mit dem zweiten, they were united one with the other. Not negadahar, not in their preparation for the mount, that's a different story. Over there were differences. Und nicht mit Sadze stehen, if you say him, in der Harachone verotze negadahar, not as they are standing because of their levels, how to pure the har. Over there was talking not negadahar is not Vayichan Sham, it's Vayichan Sham Yisrael. So Makabel Zayin the Torah, over there they weren't at the same level, but amongst themselves, there was a union over there. Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Yidden were together. Und the Achdus, the fact that they were united, this brought out in them, it called out in them, as his own Zayin believe echad, that they should be with one heart. Alle mit ein und demselben Rotzen believe to Makabel Zayin Torah. So this fact that they were ki ish echad amongst themselves brought about believe echad, that they should with one heart want to accept the Torah as well. So that level of unity amongst themselves brought about also a total union together that believe echad, they want to receive the Torah. But that's what Rashi just brings down, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, because the key is the Yisrael that brought about the Ki Ish Echad, and that is the Vayichan Yisrael. And Memele, it was believe echad keneged har to receive the Torah. Das is ches. Das is euch der Shine v'heshveresh zwischen dem believe echad ki ish echad. By us, it says ki ish echad believe echad. By Mitzrayim, it says believe echad ki ish echad. By the Mitzrayim. Und der ki ish echad believe echad von Eden. By Eden, it says ki ish echad believe echad over here von Eden. By Mitzrayim, by Egypt, is there werden ki ish echad gekommen. The reason they came like ish echad, Neseya, gekommen als mesuba from them believe echad. That came as a result, as a consequence. They were believe echad. They hated the Yid. The Yidden, they were chasing the Yidden in them Neseya chareim. Nach Yidden, they were journeying and chasing the Yidden after Yidden. That brought about Mitzrayim, Neseya together. Aber ze allein als Mitzrim, but they alone as Egyptians, they weren't all as one. And the river is Rashi might ignore the Verter Nesei Achareim, without saying Mitzrayim, because it's not, Mitzrayim is not part of the Nesei, not Loshen Yochid. Only the word Nesei Achareim, only the reading the word Mitzrayim, says just Nesei Achareim. Why? Because the Mitzrayim were takenat Neseya, they were differences. And the reason why we called it Neseya, because they leiv echad against the Yidden. But in our parsha is verkehrt. Is by Yidden the Achdus ki ish echad given mitzadem gufa zezanen Yidden. Why was it ki ish echad? Was it because they're Yidden? That's why they were ki ish echad. Ki ish echad. On the river is Dorashi madkish. Then Vayichan Sham Yisrael. Now what brings about that oneness is the idea that it is Yisrael because they're Yidden. Und the Achdus hat bei Zei Ares gerufen der Belev Echad. And then that had brought out and called out in them that one heart to Kabbalas HaTorah, that they should Vayichan Sham Yisrael to be able to receive the Torah as one. Bei der Mechilta aber hat sie Achdus Areis gesagt in dem, was Hushvu Kulam Leib Echad. Over there, their unity expressed itself, that they were all equalized into Leib Echad. In other words, it's not the fact that it was Achdus Yidden made them into Leib Echad, but they all of a sudden had one Leib Echad. They were actually the same, equal, everybody to receive the Torah. He brings down the words Neged Har in the Mechilta, because according to the Mechilta, that union came from their feeling. He believes that the Lev Echad was for the Torah, but Rashi says no, the Ki'ish Echad was union amongst themselves, that level of Achdus. And then from there came to the Lev Echad. Oistes, Apia now, based on the above, as Leut Rashi Zainen Dog Event Zwei Inyonim. According to Rashi, there were two things matters. First, Ki Ish Echad, that was the Achdus Zwischen Eden, the unity amongst the Jews. And the second thing is Belev Echad, that with one heart, the Rotzen Echad to Kabbalah Satoira. But Benoich Farstein, this will also explain them Kefal Haloshen in Hemshech Loshen Rashi, duplicate language in the continuation of Rashi's language. Rashi writes, Avol Sha'ar Kol Hachanoyes Betarumes V'Machloikes. V'Bal, der Posik is Madgish, as Vayichan Shom Yisrael. Over there, Yisrael was in this B'lei Vechot, Ki Ish Echad B'lei Vechot, is verstandig as all this Achdus is given B'lei Shom, that this unity was only there, by Bar Sinai, by Mount Sinai. Avol Shar Kol Hachanoyes Betarumes V'Machloikes, but all other encampments were with complaints and quarrels. By alle andere Chanoyes is given the Hepech Achdus in Beidin Yonim. They were lacking unity in both things. Machloikes zwischen sich. There were disagreement and fights amongst themselves, which is the Hepech from Ki Ish Echad, weren't united. Und tarumes and complaints, grievances, be'inyan from the Eberstein as matters as far as Hashem. The Hepech from Belev Echad to Kabbalah Satoira, the opposite of with one heart for receiving the Torah. Yud, the Yaino Shel Torah, the Yaino Shel Torah in this Rashi. The world on its own is like a public domain. In welchen es is nit boilet the shaykhs, in which it does not stand out the connection verbund and the knot, the tie von ein Sache mit der zweite, from one item with the other. Und das sagt sich heraus euch in der Min hamedaber bifnei atzmai. This also expresses it when we talk and the category and the type of the speaking, the human by himself, or befrat especially, that Eberstad Bashafen they mention in an Eufen, Hashem created the people in a way, was ein echad mem doimel chavere, one is not similar to his friend. When ein day same shav is their opinions, their minds are not the same. Und das wirkt euch auf die Peulas von this mention. This also impacts the actions of these people. From the mention, which are done based on according to the intellect and the feeling of the person. As the Peulas von ein mention, that the acts of one person seinen nicht bedeuten are not the same, bis feeling gegenseitig, and might even be opposite to the Peulas von a zweite mention, to the act of a second person. That Inyan Ha'achdus in Welt is verbunden mit dem Gilui von Beurei ha'echad. The unity in the world is when it's revealed the one creator, Hashem Echad, was his Hecher from Welt, which is higher than world. Und damit können wir weiter sein dem Chiluk zwischen der Mechilta und Pirush Rashi. We can explain the difference between the Mechilta and Rashi. Der Gilui von Havaya Echad in Welt. How is the Havaya Echad revealed in the world? Tut sich oiv durch zwei Sachen. It is accomplished through two things, welche seinen Hecher from Welt. Through two things that are higher than the world, Torah and Yisro. They bring Havaya Echad into the world. Torah and Yidden, und was zu lieb sei ist beschaffen geworden in der Welt, and because of them the world was created. Leut der Mechilta, according to Mechilta, hat der Gilui von Matan Torah, the revelation of Matan Torah, was is Hecher from Welt, which is higher than world, gepoilt of the Yidden noch früher. It impacted the Yidden even before Matan Torah, in dem Zman von Erev Matan Torah. So that even before Matan Torah, as shown doubled that already then, when they gekommen in Midbar Sinai, when they came to the desert of Sinai, Hushvu kulam leivecha, they all were equal with one heart. So mekabel zayin the Torah, to receive the Torah. We didn't need the unity b'ish echad in order to bring the belief echad. They already had the belief echad, just the presence of Matan Torah, even though this was before Matan Torah. But according to Rashi, the simple meaning of the pasuk, about as lipoyul is the angiven der Zman von Matan Torah, since in reality, in actuality, it was the time for before Matan Torah. You can't say as der Gilui ba'osid hat frier gepoilt of Zay the Achdus, that revelation will be in the future. The Torah, Matan Torah, has already impacted them, that they became united beforehand. But the Achdus is gekumen mitzad Yidden Gufa. It's not because of the Torah, it came from the Yid. Mitzad bechinas yichida from the leadership neshama, because of the level of yichida of the Jewish soul. Was is hecher von tam v'das, which is higher than reasoning and knowledge, was they saying ein shavis. That's das is not equal, but this is higher than tam v'das. Mitzad the nekudas ayadus. That's the Pintal Yid, the point of Judaism was his Shoida Be'ikir. Nid b'mayach, it's mainly rest not in the brain or believe in the heart. That became revealed by the Yidden as they left Egypt. How does gewirkt and gepoiled. So that impacted the Vayichan Shom Yisrael ki ish echad. So there was that union, that Yidden stood together. That deeper level that was revealed took away the separation, the Rishusarabim, and it brought them all together. The fact alone that they stood like one, as mitzadem gilif in the kudas hayadus, because of the revelation of that point of Judaism, this awoke in them the desire and the yearning to receiving the Torah b'leiv echad. Yudalef, afal pi as the Agdus amitis nemtzich mitzad nekudas hayadus. Even though that the true unity comes because of the point of Yiddishkeit Yichidish Nefesh, was di bechina is fram belois by Yidden. That level is only by Yidden. We're going to connect it now also to Mitzrayim from Desveg. Shem made one opposite the other. Is a kol ponim. So at least a me'ain, something like similar. So similar to the idea of this unity we can find by non-Jews. Klippa will sich gleichen zu Kedusha kekoi b'fnei Odom. Klippa wishes to compare itself to Kedusha as a monkey mimics a human being. Their myth is move on. Was euch by the Mitzrim. Now we understand also by the Egyptian. The dogma to them was given by the Bnei Yisrael, similar to the way it was by the Bnei Yisrael. Is given their inyan from B'lei Vechot. Over there was also one heart, but the heart was that brought them together and made that unity by them. The chilik is over, but what's the difference? Kinal. As I said earlier, by nit eden is nitchaych der Eifung von Nisagdus Habitzis Misad Atzma. But they cannot be a true union on their own. Ki ish echad, for them to be like one. She's not mer nit v'atitzo mesuba from their sinna b'lei v'echad. Over there, it can only come that unity as a result and as a consequence from their hatred that they hated b'lei. B'lei v'echad makes them ki ish echad. Hashem came by Yidden, as opposed by Yidden. Was nekudas hayadus is an emes metzias. The point of Yiddishkeit is the two existence. That accomplishes a complete union, ki ish echad, like one person. Yud base. Afal pia the achdus habitis was his doba Yidden mitzad b'chinas yichida. Even though the true union, which is by Yidden because of yichida, is nichayich by nitidin, it doesn't apply to not just afal pikein. But still, Bibaldas Matan Torah Tovkiton. Since Matan Torah accomplished, Kidu has known the Bittul HaGezera to negate, to nullify the decree, was what Mafsi given zwischen Elyonim and Tachtonim that interrupted between the upper and the lower, zwischen Elikus and Ivroim, between godliness and created being. Hados Ovgiton Oich Oiv de Bnei Noach, this also accomplished in the Bnei Noach. As Oich Zei sollen kennen der Herren dem Koyach Eliki, was his Melubish say that they too should be able to sense the godly power which is in them. So they also have that ability. And through this, that they will sense to that godly power, which idea is unity. So also by them, there's a certain sense of Agdus. That Gilui that we're talking about, of Hashem Echad, can also be to a certain extent by the Goy to be able to sense the godly spark that is in them. The dogma to the Achdus von Yidden, similar to the unity of Yidden. Aber nicht mamish, but it's not the exact same. As they sign in the to the Herren, because they are not connected to be able to really hear, to sense Vidosis by Yidden, the Bechina von Elikus, was is the Gamri Hech von the level of a God which is totally higher from the world. But Davke Mitzad der Bechina in Elikus, specifically because of this level in godliness, where the Emes Achdus becomes the true unity, Kish Echad. So they don't have like one person. They don't have it because that unity only belongs to a Yid, because Yidden have a shaykhs to the level of godliness which is higher than world. But they still have the Koyach Eliki. The Inyan as noch Matan Torah haben euch nicht Yidden a shaykhs to B'chinas Elikus, this idea. And after Matan Torah, also non-Jews have a connection to godliness. Chulu was his hecher from Seichel, his chalkos, which is higher than intellect and division. That expresses itself in halacha as the kiyum from Sheva mitzvahs b'nei neach, that the observance of the 7 noach mitzvahs darf sein nit mipnei hecher hadas, needs to be not because that's what the das, the mind, decides needs to happen. And I feel nit mitzad dem tzivui hakadosh baruch hu tzad marishim neach, and not even because of Hashem's command to Adam Noach. But it's because Hashem's command in the Torah. And He let us know by means of Moshe Rabbeinu that there is a command to the Bnei Neach for these mitzvahs, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells us that. Bal das kol echod ve'echod chayv leimer b'shvili nivra ilom. Since everybody, individual, each one and one needs to say, the world was created for me. Asulimim is b'shafing worden the ganze Welt. The entire world was created for him. Fundam suga doim midim suga medaber. Everything in the world, from the category of the inanimate till the category of the speaking. When darf ir machen arshusa yochid yichudi yisbarach, and you need to make it into a private domain for the unity of a blessed Hashem. Darf the riber yeder itzich mishtadl sein. So therefore, every year needs to put an effort. Kichol atoli boy, all that it hinges on him. Nicht nur zu mefit sein Torah v'yadus zwischen Eden, not just to spread Torah and Judaism amongst Eden, nor zu poilen oicha b'nei noyach, but also to impact, influence the b'nei noyach, azei zol mekayim zayin the seven mitzvahs did who, that they should observe their 7 mitzvahs, umekayim zayin zay, and to fulfill them, b'nei shetzivo b'hem HaKadosh Baruch b'torasa, because that is what Hashem commanded in His Torah. This is Mesicha Shabbos Parshas B'Shalach, which is also Tu B'Shvat, and Shabbos Parshas Yisro Tov Shin Mem.